Good evening. This is Left, Right and Centre. I'm Nidhi Razdan. Tonight, as the Air Force Chief says the Indian Air Force has not counted casualties in Balakot, the opposition asks, how come BJP President Amit Shah spoke of 250 casualties? As the Prime Minister accuses the opposition of helping Pakistan, is this rhetoric on Pakistan then going to decide and dominate India's poll campaign? That's our big focus tonight. Well, the Air Chief, Air Marshal BS Dhanoa, spoke to the media today saying that India had hit the intended target in Balakot, pointing out that if India had just dropped bombs in a jungle, then Pakistan would not have responded the way that it did. However, when asked on the number of casualties inflicted by India, the Air Chief said that the Air Force is not in a position to clarify how many people were there. We don't count the human casualties, he said. That's for the government to say.
If he planned to hit the target, we hit the target. Otherwise, why would he have responded?
ANI, please.
If he had dropped bombs in the jungle, there's no need for him to respond.
There's still no clarity on what exactly Pakistan is still in a denial mode.
That statement will be made by the government. No, I mean, Air Force is not in a position to clarify that how many people were inside it. That we don't count human casualties. We count what targets have we hit or not hit.
Time's up in there, please.
The bomb damage assessment that is done post a mission calculates the number of the target you've been hit or you've not been able to hit. We can't count how many people have died. That depends on how many people were there.
So even though the Air Force Chief there refused to give a number of casualties, saying that such a statement will be made by the government, it's interesting then that just 24 hours ago, BJP President Amit Shah at an election rally said that 250 terrorists were killed in the airstrike. This made him the first top leader of the ruling establishment to actually give a figure. Though curiously, before him, a couple of days ago, SS Ahluwalia, also from the BJP, actually said that the aim of this airstrike was not to inflict casualties. So even though there may not be any casualties, the aim was something that was completely different. Let's listen to what both of them said.
બધાને એવું હતું કે આ વખતે તો સર્જિકલ સ્ટ્રાઇક ના થઈ શકે હવે શું થશે કે એલર્ટનેસ બહુ હતી પરંતુ મિત્રો નરેન્દ્ર મોદી સરકારે બરોબર 13માના દિવસે એર સ્ટ્રાઇક કરી 250 થી વધારે આતંકવાદીઓને
যে আমি তোমার সমস্ত পাহারার মধ্যেও আমি তোমার বাড়িতে পৌঁছে আমি চিহ্নিত করেছি এই জায়গাটা আর আমি এই জায়গাটাকে ধ্বস্ত করতে পারি আমরা চাইছিলাম না যে কি কোনো হিউম্যান ক্যাজুয়ালিটি হোক.
So in case you're confused, here's a recap of what the various versions have been. You've heard the Air Force Chief saying, we don't count the number of casualties. Essentially, he's not putting a number on it. You've heard Amit Shah saying 250. You've heard SS Ahluwalia saying our aim wasn't even to have, inflict any casualties. This is what the Foreign Secretary of India had said on day one when the airstrike happened. He also did not put a number to it. All he said was that a large number of terrorists had been eliminated.
In an intelligence-led operation in the early hours of today, India struck the biggest training camp of the Jaish-e-Mohammed in Balakot. In this operation, a very large number of Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorists, trainers, senior commanders, and groups of jihadis who were being trained for Fidaiin action were eliminated. This facility at Balakot was headed by Maulana Yusuf Azhar, alias Ustad Ghori, the brother-in-law of Masood Azhar, chief of the JEM.
Well, in all of this, the Prime Minister has been particularly on the offensive in his various speeches, whether it has been at political rallies or other government projects which have turned into political rallies, where he's essentially used pretty much every opportunity that he has had over the last 1 week to attack the opposition and go on the offensive, saying that they were questioning the armed forces by raising questions about the strikes or by asking tough questions to the government on whether there was an intelligence failure in Pulwama. Today also the Prime Minister was in quite a mood. Listen to what he just said in Ahmedabad a little while earlier.
देश की सेना ने हिम्मत दिखाई है और मैं दोस्तों इंतजार लंबा नहीं कर सकता. चुन चुन करके हिसाब लेना ये मेरी फितरत है. कब तक निर्दोष लोगों को मारने देंगे? आप दोस्तों बताइए मुझे, आपको हमारे देश की सेना पर भरोसा है? उनकी बातों पर भरोसा है? वो जो कहते हैं उस पर आप विश्वास करते हैं? सेना जो कहे उस पर मुझे विश्वास करना चाहिए? सेना जो कहे उसको मुझे मानना चाहिए?
So that just gives you a sense of where we're heading in this general election campaign. Joining us tonight, first up, is Derek O'Brien, the leader of the Trinamool Congress's parliamentary party in the Rajya Sabha, among those leaders who's really sort of been at the forefront of questioning the government on an intelligence failure, among other things, has been Mamata Banerjee. But Derek O'Brien, you just heard what the Prime Minister said. He's essentially sending out a message that if you're asking questions or you're raising doubts about the airstrikes, or the intelligence issues in any way about Pulwama, then you are questioning the army, you are raising questions about the armed forces. What would you say to that?
Pathetic, shameless, and I'm glad you played that clip, because this is the first point we wish to make today. The Indian Air Force, the Army and the Navy, Air Force has done its job. Everyone, including Mamata Banerjee and all the 22 opposition parties, on day one we saluted them. They've done their job, they've hit their target, they've been the most consistent, they've always said no numbers. We've respected them from 25th of February for the last 70 years, we'll respect them for the next 100 years, and we salute them. That's not the issue at all. Leave the Army, the Air Force and the Navy out of this. Come to what the BJP are doing. You give me the name of one opposition leader, one, who has delivered a speech with the portrait of the brave Jawans at the back. Here is the one person who's done it. Narendra Modi, politicizing the armed forces. What business did he have to do this? He's delivered a speech. Look at these pictures. Amit Shah in Assam delivered a speech, and Amit Shah in his speech said, like the Army, the Navy and Air Force was the private property of the BJP. It's not the private property of the BJP or the Trinamool or any party. It is India's. The MP from Delhi wearing army fatigues. You name me one opposition leader who's worn army fatigues. You name me one opposition party who's taken out ads in Maharashtra with the pictures of Modi and Shah. The BJP are trying to, even the questions the Prime Minister asked today, this is the conversation. And they are desperate to get this connection between armed forces and BJP. No, nobody, the opposition parties, from the all-party meeting on the 25th, all the leaders met subsequently last week, not one opposition party leader has questioned the Army, the Navy and the Air Force. We are questioning the BJP's shameless desperation of Amit Shah and Modi and other leaders to try and link the two and to milk it for electoral politics. That's the issue. You name me one opposition leader.
Fine,
Congress,
but Derek, the point here is...
SP, BSP, up.
No,
nobody.
So the point here is that, look, when it comes to sort of whipping up a sentiment around nationalism, hyper-nationalism, Mr. Modi is very good at that. This is something that plays to his strength. Now, conventional wisdom is that after the airstrike, this has been a shot in the arm for him and the strongman image that he likes to present. Now, how Indian voters will look at this is anybody's guess. We're not going to speculate on that. But how is the opposition going to counter that narrative, you know, which he is repeating in speech after speech, that, you know, this is about the army versus the opposition. And he, like I said, he's very good at making this a very hyper-nationalist narrative. How will you counter that?
I think more than the opposition countering it, the people of India will see through. He's failed on jobs, he's failed on agriculture, he's failed on spoiling and breaking industries, failed. So he's got this new narrative. This opposition will ensure that we will not allow the precious Indian Navy, the Indian Air Force and the Indian Army to be appropriated by any political party with this fake 56-inch narrative. The kind of, I mean, you know, it's like shameless, the shameless stuff. And these are not junior leaders. There's Modi, Shah, there is the BJP Karnataka Prime Minister, the Karnataka Chief Minister, BJP President who said this happened so we'll win so many seats. There's the Assam Minister there who yesterday said, what did he say? That now the neighboring country will come and bomb the assembly in Assam. This is dangerous. But the people of India will see through this fake, dangerous conversation which the BJP is trying to have. You cannot, it's an insult to our armed forces, what BJP's Amit Shah, and they do it so blatantly. Because the man doesn't even have a conscience. I mean, look what he said to the dyslexic child. We can do another program on that, not today. On the dyslexic child. This is, nothing else matters.
So, Derek, I have one last question for
We
you.
don't want any certificate of patriotism. Yeah. No. 1 minute. Let me make another point. We don't want any certificate of patriotism from either Shah or Modi or RSS. Ask your question, please.
No. My question is that, my last question is that, has this in a sense also forced the opposition to relook at how it's doing its alliances for the election? One's getting a sense and one is hearing that, you know, suddenly the Congress is, you know, trying to reach out even to the Trinamool Congress, to other parties and getting off its high horse in a sense, because there is a sense that if this is the narrative of the election, then the opposition really needs to get its act together.
No. I think, Nidhi, as a journalist, you have every right to ask all these questions and make interpretations of all this. I don't think the two are at all to be mixed up. This is a very serious issue. You know why? Because this BJP government now also have part of a media machine in place. The first part of that media machine is trying to push this fake conversation that we are criticizing. No! Army has been the Air Force have been the most consistent in this entire one. They've said from day one, no numbers. What is the fake conversation? Who put those numbers out? 300 people died. One minister then says nobody died. The BJP president gives another number. Listen, nobody is questioning armed forces. We are questioning stuff like this. What kind of... Are you the Prime Minister of India? You are giving a speech with the martyrs, with the CRPF martyrs. Are you so desperate for your election? I'll make one promise with you. Trinamool Congress, and I cannot speak on behalf of the other parties, but I'm sure every opposition party, we will never stoop to these laws of using our precious armed forces, putting our party flags and our symbols. You know,
all right, Derek.
It comes to the time in politics where you feel like saying, yeah, phew.
Okay, well, pretty strong words from you, Derek O'Brien, on this issue tonight. Thank you for speaking to us on this. And Derek O'Brien there, the leader of the Trinamool's parliamentary party in the Rajya Sabha, making it very clear where Mamata Banerjee and her party stands on this issue of the politicization of the armed forces. We have former Union Minister Manish Tiwari here in the studio with us. Shekhar Gupta is with us as well. Satya Prakash Mishra of the JDU, Mahua Moitra of the TMC also, and Vivek Reddy of the BJP. So Manish Tiwari, let me take this to you. Did you agree with everything Derek O'Brien just said? It was very powerful the way he held up that image of the posters that were used in the backdrop of the PM speech the other day of the CRPF soldiers who were killed by terrorists. What do you think? Do you agree with him?
Well, it's a non sequitur that the Prime Minister and the BJP want to milk the airstrikes for political purposes. And I think somewhere down the line, they have also co-opted the permanent establishment. If you go back to the statement which the Foreign Secretary made just a couple of hours after the airstrike, so he said that a large number of terrorists, their handlers and their indoctrinators were killed in that airstrike. Now obviously he was making that statement on behalf of the government of India. So he must have had some inputs when he would have made that statement. And I think that really set the ball rolling. So coupled with that, you had these source-based plans in what Mr. Arun Shourie calls the North Korean media, that 300 terrorists were killed. So a popular narrative was invented on day one itself that the airstrike had actually killed 300 terrorists. Now, if you've killed 300 terrorists, there's no problem at all. But when the Indian Air Force or when other parts of the establishment were asked the same question, they were very, very candid, and they said that, look, it's not our job to count bodies, because essentially we do a damage assessment. Yes, we hit our targets, and the results would come out as to how many people actually died or not. Over and above that, you had the BJP president who went and put the figure of 250, that 250 terrorists have died. So right from day one, when the strikes were carried out, there was a concerted, orchestrated, planned attempt to put a narrative in place which would help the BJP to milk it for political purposes. And that is dangerous, because when you start using national security as a political prop, then you run the gauntlet that at some point in time, not only do you undermine and subvert national security, but you get caught out on your own lies.
I want to ask Air Chief Marshal S. Krishnaswamy, who's joining us, the former Chief of Air Staff, as well today. And sir, I don't want to drag you into a political debate, but I do want to ask you that as a former Chief of the Air Force, when you see how this is being politicized from day one, how do you feel about that, sir?
Well, I just need a minute or two to explain. Now, if we talk about politics, I don't quite understand, because there are so many parties in the country, and the election is near. There is one, it doesn't matter a person belongs to Congress or BJP or whichever the party is, but they have their friends, relatives, kith and kin in the armed forces, somebody or the other. So they're all very much part of it, and we're all citizens of India. And they all have certain important, role to play, the politics in this country. But I won't go too much into this and how they ought to fight the election, etc. It is their problem. But coming to this particular, strike and the assessment and so on, this is the very first time since independence the Air Force has gone on a preemptive offensive mission for the very first time. And I don't believe it is a politics to do anything with it. It has been years of so-called searching for ways and means to counter terrorism, and all this started after Kargil. And I headed the Air Force during Op Parakram. My Air Force spent practically a year under the wings waiting for the orders, and it's not very easy. And then we've had other attacks, and Mumbai attack, and so on and so forth. And then we're all waiting what exactly is going to happen. Nothing happened. Now we have been kind of groomed into passivity, I would say, and the day suddenly comes up to say now we have to act in a positive manner, and that could happen. It takes months, if not years, to orientate and train ourselves to that. It is not just one sudden decision to go on a strike, and this must have been planned for weeks or months, and extensive study of targets. Which are the targets? There may be 100 targets there,
of course,
or likely targets.
If I may, sir,
and
I think the issue isn't. I think the
analyzed.
issue isn't the strike itself. I think that is something that everyone realizes is significant. I just wonder whether you believe it is a mistake for India to get caught up in this debate about numbers and the number of casualties. See, the Air Chief today was very straightforward in his statement.
We are talking among very learned people. I respect all of them. It's very well known. It's very obvious, logical that we can't go there and count the bodies. But we know the target, that so-called, that place had a few hundred so-called trainees, they come and go. It's a kind of a factory. So at any one time, it is quite likely, there could be a couple of hundred people under training. And the date and time they chose, they must have been the so-called concentration of those people. I mean, this is part of the planning process. So the assumption is, there's a certain confidence level that the time they strike at night when all are asleep, there could be the maximum number of people caught into those camps.
Sir, at least when you're saying it, you're saying there is an assumption,
that's how it is chosen.
Based on whatever intelligence may have been available, there is no, you're not being categorical about it. I think the issue here is when you have sources in the government, so quote unquote, making very categorical statements. If you give me a moment, sir, I want to ask Shekhar Gupta about that. That in that sense, have we ended up tying, or has the BJP at least ended up tying itself up in its own knots? Because the very fact that an airstrike like this happened is significant. You were able to enter Pakistani airspace. This was not just POK. The message was very clear that India was ready to breach a certain red line and cross a certain threshold when it came to dealing with Pakistan. The moment this 300 number was planted, and I want to mention here, this was a briefing done by a senior minister in the government of India with reporters where they were told only to quote sources. The moment you do that, then it started unraveling and all these questions came up from international press and think tanks and so on.
Well, the reality of these strikes was strong enough. The fact that strikes were carried out on a target inside Pakistani mainland using Indian aircraft, which obviously crossed into Pakistani airspace, and a bunch of aircraft, not one or two sneaking in. That reality was strong enough. In fact, I am astounded that need was felt then to create these, to conjure up these Bikram or Betal stories. 250 killed, 300 killed, his nephew, Masood Azhar's nephew killed. This foreign secretary said that he was the head of this.
He didn't say killed, yeah.
Yeah, he didn't say killed. But everybody then conjured this up. But there have been many such source unattributable briefings. You have to compare this government's handling of this with the Vajpayee governments during Kargil, where Chief Marshal Krishna Swamy was also in service and he was actually heading the Air Force. Every evening, the services officers and a good spokesman from the MEA, they briefed reporters and also answered questions. This time we haven't had any questions answered. That is not the way Indian governments function. And then at the same time, the ruling party has gone around making these claims as if either they are inventing these facts or so-called facts, or they are getting information that others don't have, which I think just creates a politicization and also brings in a new binary that criticizing the government is criticizing the armed forces.
Or being pro-Pakistan.
Yes, but in Indian politics, Indian armed forces are led ultimately by the elected political leadership. Indian political leadership should not put the armed forces in front of them and hide behind them to not answer questions. This is being done, I think, because elections are so close, but there will be consequences to this going ahead.
Interesting. I'm going to come back to that on what you think would be the political outcome of this. Mr. Vivek Reddy, then may I ask you, what is the information that the BJP president, your party president, is privy to, which the Indian Air Force chief does not know about, which no other government official has been willing to come on record about? What does Mr. Shah know? I mean, he's not a member of the Cabinet Committee on Security. He's not the defense minister. So how does he know this?
Well, Nidhi, I think I've heard what all the speakers have said. And I think that this very effort to dilute the great achievements of the army and the clearance given by the Indian government to the army to take its own steps, I think there is so much politicization by the opposition parties to not to give any credit to the government of India and to the present establishment. I think they are also worried that they are politically cornered since the government took prompt action and the action was immediate. So therefore, the whole effort here by various speakers, particularly Derek O'Brien, who went to such shameful levels, believe me, I'll tell you, on national television, to such shameful levels to oppose or, to decry against what the achievement or against the achievement of the government. I think this is not the political language or discourse that is expected of MPs and parliamentarians. And he has shown to what low levels we can stoop. So the broader issue is, Nidhi, that the opposition is now trying to mislead and say that nothing happened there. This pattern of doubt was also seen after the surgical strike that took place
sorry,
in
Mr. Reddy, if I may interrupt,
all the press statements
may I
made by
just
the
ask you,
Congress,
who in the opposition has said that nothing happened in the airstrikes?
Let me tell you very clearly.
No, can you please
This is a
name the
repetition.
opposition leader who has said nothing has
This is
happened?
a repetition, Nidhi. All that I am saying is...
No, but can you give us an example?
That is what they are saying. They are saying there are no deaths.
No, they are not saying that.
There are no deaths.
They are not saying that.
Until the air marshal said, about 3 days ago, Mamata Banerjee said, 2 days ago, Mamata Banerjee said that nothing is given to us about the airstrikes. There is no material placed about the airstrikes. She doubted the airstrikes. So, this has been the pattern of thinking of the opposition.
But Mr. Reddy, you are not answering my question. How does Mr. Amit Shah know that the number is 250? Can you please clarify? How does Mr. Amit Shah, the president of the BJP...
This was
by whom?
This was what was put out, that had been coming in the media. Mr. Amit Shah must have his sources. I am at present not in a position to tell you about his source. But definitely, the government has the count, the broader count, the broader picture.
So why doesn't the government come on record, Mr. Reddy?
This was doubted in the earlier strikes also.
But Mr. Reddy, why doesn't the government just come on record? If you have a number...
we produced the videos after 1.5 years.
But if there is a number, why doesn't the government say it on record?
These are important...
Why sources? Why not just come on record and say, yeah, we killed 250 or we killed 300?
The government will do it at its own time and choosing. Nidhi, just because I and you want to ask for this information, the government doesn't put it out. The government will do it at a particular point of time when it suits them, when it is right to share this information. They did that the last time.
Why plant it in the media?
2016 was a hoax.
Then why plant it in the media as sources?
But
Mr.
ultimately
Reddy,
the government put out the video
Reddy,
recording.
Why plant it in the media as sources?
Yes.
If it's so sensitive, then don't plant it at all.
We have not planted it at all.
Who's
Obviously,
planted it?
Nidhi, come on, it's very, 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 very basic. This basic thing, unfortunately, many of the panelists are not able to understand. The basic thing is, when you strike at your target, and that was a terror factory, and it is blown to pieces, apparently people would have died. So why are you speculating? Why are others speculating, not you? Why are the others speculating that nobody died?
But then why is Amit Shah speculating that 250 died?
The opposition today, their whole attempt, the whole attempt of the opposition is to mislead the nation. That is what they have been doing. Why are they doing this? Because they are cornered. They have no answer for these strikes.
Okay, Mr. Reddy, one moment.
Mr. Modi has shown to this nation that he can stand up and take decisions, resolute decisions.
Mahua of the TMC, Mahua Moitra of the TMC wants to come in there, and particularly, Mr. Reddy has been particularly critical of Derek O'Brien's language and the kind of criticism he unveiled earlier on this program. Mahua.
Yeah, we've heard before Derek, you played a clip of the Honorable Prime Minister of this country. Hindi is not my native language, but from what I could make out, he said "chun chun ke." He sounded like a really cheap version of Gabbar Singh, perhaps small town mafia, standing there and speaking like that. This is the Prime Minister of India. So I don't think the BJP has any ground whatsoever to criticize any member of the opposition. I think this discussion needs to be brought back on track to discuss what the three things are. Excuse me, sir, I didn't interrupt you. I didn't interrupt the drivel that you were spouting. Please have the decency to let me finish my conversation here. I'm going to go through the 3 points here. What this government tried to do, there are 3 objectives. One is a military objective. Nidhi, are you going to ask him to keep quiet, or do we need to get off the show?
No, Mahua, go ahead.
Because we didn't interrupt him.
We'll all get a chance to speak.
Thank
we have
you.
loads of
There
time.
are 3 points. There are 3 points that this strike was supposed to achieve. One is a military objective, which is to tell Pakistan that, look, this is the Indian army. If necessary, we can take action against terrorist base camps that the military is helping to run in Pakistan. That's the first, a military objective. The second is a diplomatic objective, to tell the whole world that this cannot be a business as usual approach to Pakistan. That's the second. The third is a political objective, which is the usual narrative, which is Mr. Modi, him of the 56-inch chest, he's the Gabbar Singh, he's the big man, he can take care of this is election season, give the country to him, he will do a good job. So these are three objectives. Of these three objectives, unfortunately, the only one that the BJP has any definitive plan to succeed in seems to be the third one. Because on the first one, Nidhi, if you look at all the informations out there, I have actually followed this very closely, as have people like Mr. Gupta and yourself, I'm sure. We had the strikes. After the strikes, the only official communication was from the Foreign Secretary Vijay Gokhale.
Yeah.
He did not even mention that the Indian planes had crossed the line of control.
Nowhere
Nowhere in any official application we didn't go through the line of control. Number one, he said that a large number of militants had been eliminated. That was the only official communication. If you looked at the February 27, the day after, the Times of India quoted top defense sources and said 5 to 6 Mirage jets went over, crossed over the LOC, 3:27 a.m., came back at 4 a.m. If you look at the Hindustan Times the same day, they said 12, not 6, fighter jets crossed over to the LOC, went into a 2.5-hour operation, came back. If you look at the Indian Express on the 2nd of March, it said it never even crossed into the LOC. They used precision-guided missiles from the Indian side. So you have three very different stories. The first story said you had over 300 killed. You had Surendra Ahluwalia come in and say
actually you make a very valid point, and
Amit Shah
that really
250.
reflects sadly on the state of the media, and I think Shekhar Gupta would agree to that, because everyone's writing
That's
a different
absolutely
thing.
what we're talking
you know,
about. So
with
you-
whatever is
absolutely.
planted,
So
you know,
when you're looking
without
exactly,
question,
so different
and
forces
we're
are
all
coming
guilty
in.
of it. We're all guilty of
Right.
it.
So when you see
you're
all
right.
this is coming in, yeah. So
No, so
I know
one
you're
second.
guilty
I
of
want
it,
to
yes,
ask a
but you've also
BJP
been fed
ally
these
here.
sources.
I want to ask Mr. Mishra here, who's the spokesperson of the JDU, that as an ally of the BJP, are you comfortable with the way this election narrative is playing out? Are you comfortable with the way the armed forces are being politicized by the ruling party, your ally?
First of all, who actually politicized these armed forces? It was Congress leaders Navjot Singh Sidhu who started coming out with a kind of a statement that was highly anti-national. I must say it was a highly anti-national.
anti-national? What did he say?
If a nation is responsible for carrying out terrorist strike and he is giving clean chit to that nation, what we should supposed to say? Simple. When 21 parties sat, together and come out with a statement, and Rahul Gandhi read out that statement that BJP is trying to politicize. Why this is happening? I must say you one thing. Because the election is near. The first time the Indian government retaliated back to the Pakistan in their POK territory. And they doubted surgical strike. They were asking for proof of surgical strike. How can you question the army of this country? What the government has to do, government has to come out with, let me complete. The government has to come out.
Who questioned the army?
Yeah, they questioned the army. Mamata Banerjee, Mayawati, Arvind Kejriwal, every person questioned that time during the surgical strike. They were this time they come out very slowly when they demanded the all political party meeting with under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. It didn't happen, but the all political party meeting happened. Then after they started coming, they are politicizing this whole war game. This is not true at all. BJP never politicized anything. They responded, the government of the day responded what was accurate and required as per the demand of the time. This is the election time.
So may I
and
ask
one point I want to add, whether it is cricket, whether it is everything in between India and Pakistan is being politicized by everyone. This is a highly politically charged country, but one thing we are very sure, we supported that point of time. Even surgical strike happened, we were not in NDA. Our Chief Minister Nitish Kumar supported unconditionally. They challenged it. What Arvind Kejriwal was stating, kitne last tum giraoge, kitna, is this the way to talk?
Can I ask you, when you talk about politicization, why was the Prime Minister standing in front of a poster with this pictures of the dead CRPF men?
Who created that poster? That doesn't matter anything.
Why
Prime
not?
Minister appeared on any rally and somebody has posted placed anything
He doesn't
there.
look where he's standing and what is behind him?
Army personnel are the we proud of them. Very fine. If somebody is somewhere doing, it doesn't mean the whole country is politicizing the army.
Mr. Mishra, when the Prime Minister of India makes a political speech and he has the pictures of the dead CRPF soldiers behind him, is that not the politicization of the armed forces?
I don't endorse that at all.
You
But
don't.
if something happens sometime, if some BJP worker or any worker had put that poster, we don't endorse that at all. We are not in support of
so
that.
now I want to ask Manish Tiwari that what you are all being accused of repeatedly is that you're not supporting this government action, that the government took a political initiative. It has to have had come from them, because our armed forces are not, it's not the Pakistani army which does what it wants, right? The signal comes from the political leadership at the top. What he's saying is, you're casting doubts and therefore it is anti-national.
Well, first of all, this entire narrative, which has been run for the last 5 years, that if you question the BJP, you're anti-national, if you question the government, you're treacherous, if you ask legitimate questions of the establishment, you're seditious, if not a downright traitor. This is absolutely an obtuse narrative which has no place in a democracy. Given the fact that there is civilian supremacy over the armed forces, I think everybody has a legitimate right to ask the right questions. I think that's how a democracy functions, and that's how every mature democracy functions. So therefore, I would like to reject and debunk this myth which has been deliberately perpetuated in order to stifle all discourse and ask questions. Number two, Nidhi, you see, what is extremely important is why this fog of war has been created. Why are these multiple narratives in play? The reason why these multiple narratives are in play, because the NDA BJP government orchestrated these multiple narratives. So you plant stories in friendly media, then you allow them to get a life of their own, then you legitimize it, by talking about it on a dais, and then the narrative is complete. So there is a method to that madness, and as Mr. Shekhar Gupta was rightly pointing out, the appropriate and proper way of doing it would have been that the MEA or the defense spokespersons would have briefed.
Yeah, the communication has been extremely poor.
No, the communication has not been faulty. There is a method to that madness. The reason why there has been non-communication is so that you allow this fog of war to perpetuate itself, and you can float all kinds of stories that you want. The third, which is far more important, is when you come to politicization. The Prime Minister of India stood up and questioned the airstrikes. He said, if the Rafale would have been there, the outcome would have been different. What does the Prime Minister mean by this statement? The fact
is, the Air Chief actually said that the MiG-21 Bison is very good.
No. The fact is that the Indian Air Force went in. They say that we struck the targets which we intended to strike. Then you have the fact that a MiG-21 Bison actually downed an F-16. So therefore, what is the different outcome of the military airstrike or of the dogfight which took place, which the Prime Minister would have wanted with the Rafale now? And then you have Surinder Singh Ahluwalia, who's not been mentioned in this conversation. Sardar Surinder Singh Ahluwalia stands up and says, it was not our intent to kill terrorists. It was our intent to send a warning to Pakistan. So therefore, these multiple narratives have been deliberately put in place so that each of them acquire a life of their own, and the BJP can pick and choose as to which is the one which is most appropriate for their politics.
Mr. Mishra had a point.
Basically, the first time the Indian government retaliated in the way Pakistan wanted elation, this is very, the opposition party is unable to digest this because they have never done so in the last 10 years. They sat silent when the Mumbai attack happened. So they are unable to digest, so they are coming out very slowly, so that the nation should not give the credit to the Narendra Modi government and the NDA government at the center, that the nation is safe in their hand. Suppose, Prime Minister calculated that if Rafale would have been with us, basically Rafale is a very, high kind of technology. He calculated very well. MiG-21 crashed every time, but it was a great moment for us that MiG-21...
Let me interrupt you there. That today the Air Force Chief has said that the MiG-21 Bison is a perfectly capable and a good aircraft.
It is a capable.
So I think I will take the Air Force Chief's word over anybody else's.
It is capable. Sir, hang on. Indian Air Force even today flies and trusts 5 squadrons of MiG-21s, not 1 or 2. 5 squadrons.
You people are better on, much more better on, defense expert. I don't know. Rafale, what scientists say, what the defense experts say, that the Rafale is a highly capable,
Of course, but there's no way you would have had 5 squadrons of Rafale. You would still be flying MiG-21.
Why we required in Rafale? Why Congress party started talking about Rafale? When they were in the power, they started talking about Rafale. Why this is so?
Rafale will have its own
actually, the opposition party is unable to digest what the Indian Prime Minister is doing and the government of the day is doing against of terrorism. No, this is your problem, that you are unable to digest
Mr.
whatever
Mishra,
the government.
Mr. Mishra,
Did you
Mishra,
digest?
may I ask you a
Yeah,
question?
yeah,
Who dismembered Pakistan into two?
No,
Who created? So therefore,
supported it.
No. So therefore, if you start going down the history,
I didn't want that point of time. I didn't want that point of time.
But you would have read about
the leader of the
you
leader
would have
of
read
that
about
point of time called Indira Gandhi. Durga in 71,
you have mismanaged this
65,
country.
Jai Jawan, Jai Kishan.
UPA 1 and 2.
We supported the
Why are
nation
you going
united.
so far away?
On that point of time, this point of time, you are questioning the government. This is
we are not questioning. The Prime Minister questioned the airstrikes. Your own ministers have questioned the airstrikes. The opposition has not questioned the airstrikes. You are absolutely mistaken about that.
Okay, 1 second, gentlemen. I would like to give Shekhar
demand of a political party, all party meeting. What was there?
Why? And all party meeting is a norm after any such cross-border
there was
activity.
no political color. That point of time, the nation was united. All political parties sat together in a united voice. Now you are giving so many colors
Mr.
to
Mishra,
that.
I just want to correct you that the first political statement was made by the Prime Minister.
That's right.
Where he actually got up and he said, look what I have done and my government has done, the Congress did nothing.
Yeah,
so
every government,
the politicization, Mr. Mishra, the politicization
a
began
fact,
by
Nidhi.
the Prime Minister.
That is a fact.
If you think so that if Prime
not a
Minister
thing,
is
it's a
coming
fact.
out of any
It is a-
statement that his
it is a
government,
fact. It's on-
definitely
it's
his
on
government has
record.
the credit to retaliate in the
Nidhi,
way
can I
it
say
should
something,
have been
please?
done
Then-
earlier as
then-
well.
then
Why
it's
did,
not-
never
then
done
why
in
did the
past.
Prime Minister question the airstrikes?
Nidhi, can I say
This is the
something,
first
please?
time that you have the Prime Minister of the country questioning his own airstrikes.
No, he
What
never-
is the meaning of that statement?
don't
If
do
we would have
such
had the
things.
Rafale,
By the
the
By the way,
outcome
the
would have been
Pakistani
different.
media
What's this?
picked up that
Yeah,
statement and said,
what is the meaning of that
One
statement?
second.
No, when you
Mr.
have the
Mishra,
Prime
you know,
Minister
can I
himself
say
questioning the
something?
One
airstrikes.
second, guys. It was the Pakistani media, by the way, that picked up that Prime Minister's statement on Rafale, ironically, and said Mr. Modi is questioning India's airstrikes.
That's right.
Saying
Which-
Indian
Nidhi,
Prime
can I
Minister
say
has
something,
acknowledged
please?
Pakistan Air
Ridiculous.
Force's
Why do they
superiority.
even
Yeah,
And
exactly.
And the way
These
the
were the
statement was
headlines in
made, it was
Pakistan.
prone to being misinterpreted. Obviously,
Nidhi, I'm not
obviously,
Mr. Mishra, you have
meaning
to
to
have
that
this.
statement.
We
Can
are
I
not,
speak?
sir. Mr. Mishra,
Sir,
let him
sir, can
speak.
I speak?
Mr. Mishra, let
Clarify
him
his
speak.
Sir,
statement.
can I speak?
Yeah.
That I obviously cannot believe that the
Nidhi,
Prime Minister had
Momo,
meant to
one
say
second.
that, but the way that statement was made was very open to, very prone to misinterpretation.
Misinterpretation.
The Prime Minister should have thought many times before either speaking that or finessing it, so it will not be misused. But it has been misused. It was, I think, an indiscreet statement. It's a lot to say
Can I
about a
ask you
Prime
the
Minister.
final question then,
Right.
which is what you talked about earlier, you touched upon. How is this going to play out in the election campaign? Does this advantage Modi or not?
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, I wanted to correct him that MiG-21, sir, will not be replaced by Rafales. MiG-21s will be replaced by Tejas, where that we are building.
No, it will be replaced by Rafale. But if you have more capability, what is wrong in that?
No, nothing wrong with that.
The Air Chief today said the MiG-21 Bison was perfect.
So
And
anyway,
the Air Chief
And it
also
was the
said, sorry
Congress
Shekhar to
government
interrupt
that
you,
prevented
the
us
Air
from
Chief
getting
also
that
said
capability.
that when you launch an airstrike, you use your best aircraft, but when you're responding to an adversary, you use whatever assets
whatever
that
is
you
there,
have.
yes, whatever
last
is there.
on this
So,
political
Please
question.
come and
The
put
political-
your-
One moment, guys, one moment.
political
This is
question, a
ridiculous.
challenge for the, obviously, if there's an election today, BJP will benefit because it's an emotional mood. The challenge for the BJP is, can they sustain it? And can they sustain it without more incidents taking place or without, can rhetoric be sustained these days over 12 weeks? Unlikely. So, will they let it fade or will something be done to sustain this rhetoric? That's a question. The other thing that I wanted to say, that in a democracy like India, armed forces are a very important, very powerful, very respected institution. But armed forces are accountable to the elected political government and parliament of the day. Armed forces, there is no division of powers that includes armed forces in India. It is the judiciary, parliament, legislature,
exactly.
and the executive. So, if you start using the armed forces in your politics like this, then essentially the political leadership will start losing its ability to hold the armed forces accountable. India is not Pakistan. India should never become Pakistan. In fact, it's the Pakistanis who've suffered greatly for putting their armed forces on such a pedestal and becoming a national security state. That country has ruined itself.
I think that's a very important note of caution to end on, and I would like to thank you all for coming in on this. Let's see just how ugly this campaign is going to get. This is even before the election dates have been announced.